Hello, I'm Jeremy with Crosslink Custom Coatings, and today I'm going to show you how we create a sign using only powder coating. Everything from the powder coated base, to laying out graphics, to spraying powder graphics, and then applying a clear coat over the top. Let's get started. All right, we're gonna start off by hitting this sign with some 220 grit paper. This is a fairly thin aluminum panel. Most of the things, you know, we would media blast. Something like this, you really don't want to stick in a media blaster because it'll warp pretty easily, but the 220 is going to be plenty to give this the etch that it needs for the powder to adhere to. This is Tiger Drylax Epo Strong, which is an epoxy-based filler that we use quite a bit here. It's basically just a Bondo you can use for powder coating that will withstand the cure temperatures. Just go back over these after they are cured. I just let these sit. It was probably a couple days in between, and I just let these sit and cure. You can also force cure that in the oven, but it wasn't really necessary, so. Again, since this panel is curved a little bit, I just added a little extra wire support in the middle to help hold it so it wouldn't flop around too much. All right, so we're just going to start with a black base coat on here. Now we're going to go over the whole thing with that. Now our lettering and our logo are going to be black, so like I said before, this is kind of a reverse stencil, but this is basically just going to give us a nice layer underneath. So we've got a couple coats of powder on this thing. Since it's going to be outside, that'll help it give it a little bit of longevity. I gave this almost a full cure. Now, the reason I did that was basically because when we go to lay our stencils out on there, I don't want them to stick into the powder and when we go to try and pull them off. So they got a pretty good cure. Into the office. We're getting cut out here. That's a green poly stencil. It's basically the same as the green high temp tape that we use all the time, but it's got a backing on it, so then I can run it through my vinyl cutter. I use Corel Draw for most of my graphics, so I do all the layouts and everything in there. Duncan had given us a PDF file. I just converted that into a vector format and put that in. I ran it over into my cut program, and I laid it out in actual dimensions, so then I can kind of go through and actually measure everything to see where the spacings are and all of that for the sign, and then to measure the width of everything when it comes through, because I've only got 12-inch wide green poly, and so everything fit on there except for the Duncan Airplane logo, and I had to basically just splice that together, which worked fine. So there's half of the airplane logo that I cut, and then I basically just cut the other half and then overlap them. All right, moved into the other room, and we're going to start weeding this, which is basically taking out everything that we don't want left. Now we're going to cover up everything here with the letters and the logo that we want to leave black, and then we'll spray the entire thing in white, and then pull that logo off and leave the letters in black. This stuff does not weed as well as like regular vinyl does. And it could be, my cutter's probably getting a little bit dull. That doesn't help for sure. But it just takes a little bit of work. It kind of wants to pull everything off of there when you go to weed it. Now I'm laying a transfer paper over the top of it, and that's basically going to hold it all together while we take the backing off, which leaves the sticky side down, and then lay it down onto the sign, pull the transfer paper off, and then that leaves our stencil on the sign. So now that we've got our stencils all weeded and ready to go, it's time to lay out what we've got here for the sign. And I've got that here on the clipboard, and that's basically just gonna show, it's just got the dimensions on there, and that's just gonna tell us where we need to lay those pieces out specifically on the sign. Now, I'll just use some blue painter's tape to make those marks on there, and then we can just lay those on there. So as you saw, we're kind of doing a reverse type stencil. So we're basically gonna be covering up everything that we wanna keep black, and then we'll shoot the rest of the sign in white, and then we'll pull that stencil off of there, and then that'll leave our logo and our graphics on there. So we're ready to start laying that out. Let's do that now. So I'm just going by the dimensions that I had figured out from Corel Draw. I just measured in between all of the spaces. So I'm just using a blue painter's tape here to lay that out to give me kind of the edges and to let me know where I'm going to be putting these graphics down. So we're pulling the backing off, and then that stencil is stuck to the transfer paper. So we'll just lay that out then, get all the dimensions on it, line everything up, keep it square, keep it centered. We'll pull that backing off, and then just work the stencil down. Keep as many air bubbles out of there as you can. All right, so we'll pull the transfer paper off of there and move on to the next step. Ah! What have you done? What'd you do to the sign? Well, we went over it with some 1500 grit paper and just wet sanded it a little bit. That's gonna help get the little dust nibs off of there. And then also that will give the white a little something to bite to so it doesn't have a completely smooth, slick surface. So we'll just get this cleaned up and then we'll be ready to get it hung up and shoot some white on it. So we're back out of the oven after an almost pretty much full cure on there. We'll go through and get all of the stencil removed from there. I did have a few little spots where the stencil kind of lifted up, but I was able to go back with an X-Acto knife kind of and just clean those up real quick before we continued on. You can see a couple of those little areas around there on that logo where the stencil lifted up just a little bit, but overall turned out great. So with all of the stencil off of there and a little bit of detail work done, went through and laid down the clear coat. After the final cure, we're all done. This sign came with a frame, and that's what you can see there with those brackets, how that worked. That was just basically, we just did that in a gloss white. Our customer came and picked this up, and they are getting ready to get it installed over the entrance to their building. Just want to thank these guys for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this. This is kind of a new little division that Duncan has, and they've got some really cool stuff over there that they're working on. So it's just been a lot of fun to be able to kind of be a part of that. So I want to thank you guys for watching. That's all we've got for this one. We'll see you on the next one.